This is going to be, I believe, a fairly long video. So I want to talk about a few things. My first video, I tried to make it shorter to help improve the overall viewability of the video, but then I found out that what I put out, while it was good, didn't deep dive into some of the pieces of the gear that I was using. And I want this video to kind of smooth that out and actually go over everything in kind of a deep manner, talk through what I know about the build and how you can scale it, etc. If you have any questions outside of the video, feel free to ask them in the comments. I look at all of the comments and I try to respond to each one. So feel free to ask there if you have any questions. Anything that I don't bring up in the video is likely brought up in the Mobalytics link, which is also going to be down below in the description. This video took a while to get out. And the reason for that is because I believed 0.1.1 was going to nerf our build a bit because of the interaction between Herald of Thunder and Herald of Ice, but I was mistaken. So the build has not had anything happen to it. It is still blasting and I'm having so much fun in maps. Things are going very, very smoothly. So we're going to go through every piece of gear, and we're also going to go through the passive tree. So first off, we'll just start with our bow. So my bow has percent fizz, flat fizz, percent fizz being the percent value up here, this T6, and then the flat fizz, which is this T8 value down here. And then I also have flat lightning damage, which is helpful. If you need to, lightning damage is not required. You can actually do cold instead. Cold is actually better in my opinion, but this is what I was able to craft and get. Life per enemy killed, mana per enemy killed is helpful for sustain. All three of these suffixes are not required. You can actually replace all of them with attack speed, proj skills, and extra arrows. Right now, I only have 2 arrows because it's a Gemling, 1 from the natural use of the skill, and then +1 for the fact that it's a dual string bow. There is something to be said about going with a different kind of bow, a different base, but instead making sure that your suffix has +2 arrow. That would make it better than this bow, at least this, but I don't have any other options or any other suggestions for that. If you'd like to go that route, feel free to do so. Let me know actually in the comments which bow you decided to go with if it wasn't dual string, and I'll get to the helmet and the gloves and everything else in just a moment. But I want to start on the pieces that are pretty flexible, and then I'll go over the pieces that are not as flexible. So for the armor, we want to make sure that we have high life, high energy shield, and high evasion rating. And when I say high life, the only reason that you care about the high life is because we are splitting our damage between our life and our energy shield. And I'll talk about that when I get to the helmet. And having additional life means you just have a better time with sustaining and surviving. Resistances are good here. You want to fill in the res you don't have. I was lucky enough to actually come across this on trade. They already corrupted it with 30 to life on the implicit. Got a massive life roll on the explicit, and then super high fire and lightning, which are the 2 I needed very, very much. So for boots, movement speed, chaos res, or any kind of res, dexterity and or int. If you're having a problem with keeping up with your dex rolls because you need to do int for Hands of Wisdom in action, then you can go dex here. Int here, like I said, is also really, really good because int means more damage, movement speed, life. This mana is actually very helpful too. And the 7% chaos res is coming from our soul core. So for quiver, flat cold, flat fizz, very important. The more flat damage we have, the more our build scales to the moon. Very important. Make sure you can get flat damage wherever you can. In this case, I have proj speed or projectile speed. That's not required. It's good, but there's something to be said about not doing projectile speed and instead swapping that over for damage with bow skills. Projectile speed's not required. Actually, in my opinion, I would actually do less projectile speed, even though we have the node in the tree that gives us increased damage per proj speed. The reason I say this is because in your single target setup, when you're bossing, whenever you use lightning rod on your target and you have cast on shock going and you shoot out your ball lightnings, you want to have less projectile speed because the faster those ball lightnings shoot out, the more distance past the lightning rods means that it doesn't have a chance to actually hit the lightning rod and trigger the effect. So less prod speed was actually going to be more helpful for this, so that ball lightning is able to stay within the confines of those lightning rods to deal more damage. I'll talk about the cast on shock setup that's been changed from the one on the guide. This is by no means required. I have Orb of Storms as a second option. So back to the quiver. Projectile skills, also pretty important. I didn't know how important it was, but proj skills, very, very important. I was able to get, I think, like 10,000 damage. Let me remove. So I switched my amulet from a ES base to this just because it had proj speed, spirit, cold and lightning res. Once I remove this, you'll see that my damage goes down considerably. Actually, let me go grab my other amulet. So 56,000 without those +2 proj, I go down to 50,000. So plus to proj is super good. Super, super good. So now, with that being said, plus to proj also means that you have higher mana cost on your skills. And for lightning arrow, it seems to just the lightning or the mana cost just goes insane. I'll talk about that a little bit later when I get into the gems, but just know that the more projectiles you have, plus projectile skills that you have in your gear, the more mana cost it will be. And like I said, I'll get into why or how to mitigate that a little bit later. Attack speed on your quiver, and then the dexterity is super helpful too, because it also gets us to our breakpoint where we can use the bow and not have to worry about pumping a lot of extra dex on the tree. This is essentially just a clean, hey, we have dex here, we can put int elsewhere, right? Because we want to fill up everything with int because of our gloves. So the piece of gear that makes this build deal so much more damage is the gloves. 1 to 10 lightning damage per 10 intelligence, and then 3% attack speed per 25 dexterity. These gloves are not cheap. If you're looking at using them, I recommend saving up a few divine. I think the last time I checked, not for these specific ones because these are 2 socket, but the last time I checked for a pair, it was 4 divine. They're going down. They were 5 divine, I think, or 6 divine at some point in the launch, but now they've gone down because people are farming the boss more. But anyway, if you get yourself a pair, make sure that you know that, hey, like now we're going to be scaling attributes a bit. So in my case, I have 220 dex, which is enough to wield my bow and be able to take care of the stat requirements for lightning arrow and lightning rod. I think lightning arrow right now is level 20 base. I was able to get a 20 gem. Yeah. So level 20 base is 205 dex. The bow requires 148, but you need 205. At least you need 212 for a dual string base, but I had the reduced attribute requirements. So the rest of your points are going to be into intelligence to improve your damage. You'd be surprised. So because we're scaling intelligence because of Hands of Wisdom in action, the amount of damage that we get is astronomical. And I will show you with that 200 int, I get 16,000 DPS tooltip, which is a lot, right? Going from 40k in T16, T17, and T18 maps, you need all the damage you can get. In our case, Lightning Arrow being at the 56 to 60k range once we get our buffs, that is very, very good. It helps us almost immediately freeze and shatter enemies from the interaction we have with Herald of Thunder and Herald of Ice. Those are the gloves. The helmet, this is very important for the tank version of the build. If you do not have Hands of Wisdom in action and you do not have a serious disdain, you can replace both of those with just your gloves. You can do flat damage, preferably physical and cold. You can also do lightning. That's great too because of lightning rod. When I say lightning rod, I mean this lightning rod with non-crit hits is lucky because only lightning damage is going to be lucky, not anything else. So if you add lightning damage into your gloves, it's going to be more damage regardless, and it's going to be better than just regular damages or damage types. The reason you would add cold is to make sure you can freeze quicker. So what this helmet's giving us is it gives us, at least mine, the typical version is anywhere from 25 to 30% of your maximum life as maximum energy shield. In the case with me, I have 1731 energy shield, and when I take off this helmet, I have 586. So the amount of energy shield I get with this helmet, plus my tree getting some energy shield over here, that is enough to bring me up to that number. And another piece of information for the helmet is the damage taken bypasses energy shield. You want this to be as low as you can. In my case, when I corrupted my helmet, I got to 37%, and 26% damage taken bypasses energy shield. So I take 26% of all the damage to my health instead of my energy shield, because by default, if you were to take damage, it would hit your energy shield first. Except for chaos damage. Chaos damage always bypasses energy shield. But yeah, so for this helmet, you want to make sure that you get the highest amount of percent max life as max ES and the lowest percent damage taken bypasses energy shield. In my case, I was also able to get a good rarity roll and a good max mana roll. Rarity is nice. That would be the third stat on this helmet that you would want to have up there. The max mana is not required for you to have up there. If you get something good, great. If not, don't worry about it, but you just care about the other three. And then socket in any kind of rune or soul core that gives you what you're lacking. And in my case, I was lacking fire res. As you can see from my character sheet, I only have 78% res. So if I took this off, I'd be at 66. So I needed the fire res pretty bad. Okay, we'll go into the rings, and then I'll go into the Headhunter, or why I'm using Headhunter. So why breach rings? So breach rings give us the ability to have 50% quality instead of the normal 20% of any kind of catalyst. In my case, I needed fire res, and I had fire damage to attacks on this ring, so I decided to go ahead and just quality up fires. Now, fire damage on my rings is not ideal. It's actually not as good as if you had cold or fizz. It is still a damage mod nonetheless. You can see from this ring, I've got flat lightning, flat fire. I also have rarity and then dual res. The rarity in this case is a suffix, which only gives us, it's purely for quality of life, lets us drop good drops, or at least good currency and good bases, gives us some more rare bases. And then, like I said, my fire res and cold res, that's just to fill out my res. So in this case, the fire damage and the lightning damage are the big hitters here. Make sure whenever you get your rings that you try to go for as much flat damage as possible. Obviously, the more flat damage you get, or the more flat damage you get on your rings, and you try to look for those, at least on the trade site, you will likely come into very, very expensive pieces of gear. So do your best to have a safe medium between your resistance caps, rarity, and flat damage. Same thing goes for this ring. I was able to get cold damage and lightning damage. This ring also has strength. Strength helps with, I believe, yeah, strength helps with some of our supports that give us a requirement for strength. So if you end up getting to a point where you need to use certain supports and you can't afford them because you don't have enough strength, it would be good to get strength on your gear where needed, or you can convert your passive attributes to strength if needed. Cold and lightning res just to fill out the res, and then, like I said, the flat cold and lightning for just additional damage. And the cold damage here is very, very clutch. It's very, very nice. Helps us, like I said before, it helps us freeze enemies quicker. Talked about the amulet. You need spirit. I believe the absolute minimum you would need is 45. Yeah, I think 45 spirit. 45 spirit or 47 spirit is the lowest you can go. My old amulet had 50 spirit. No, it had 49. 49, I believe, gets us to the next breakpoint where we don't have to take this second reservation node. So you can either go for spirit explicit and on a spirit base, or you can just do the spirit explicit and make sure it's the highest it can go. This gets really expensive, especially in the case where you also want to go proj skills and some high res. This, in my case, I couldn't afford a different amulet that had, because I wanted to get life on my amulet too, but I decided to just go for spirit, proj skills, cold, and lightning res, because that's what I needed to fill out the res. and then I quality it with cold quality, and then allocated Doomsayer because I like the clear speed. Doomsayer is not required. You can read at the Mobalytics link down below for your options when you anoint. In this case, you could do Doomsayer, or I think Patient Barrier is one for more defense whenever you're doing the Energy Shield variant. So why are we using Headhunter instead of Ingenuity? There's gonna be a lot of people in the comments saying, hey, you need to use Ingenuity instead. It's much better because of X, Y, and Z. And while traditionally non-mapping setups, that is correct, Ingenuity would be a better belt. In my case, in Breach, I love using Headhunter because it gives us all these buffs that we wouldn't otherwise have whenever we kill a rare monster. I spent 10 divines on Headhunter. It's definitely the cheaper of the two options. Ingenuity is more expensive because it gives you some pretty big bonuses from your rings. Ingenuity is the belt that gives you % increased modifiers from your rings. In my case, I want Headhunter because I'm doing Breach content, killing a lot of rares. That improves both my clear speed, and it improves my tankiness whenever I get certain rare monster mods. So talking about swap, in my case, if I swapped out for Thief's Torment for my single target setup, I have very little fire and cold res. And so in order to cap it, I'm running a fire and cold linen belt, which also has some life on it, to overcap my fire and cold again. In this setup, this gives me the ability to sustain my lightning rod. Because right now, whenever I'm shooting lightning rod, if I shot it without Thief's Torment, I would run out of mana during a boss fight. But because of the fact that Thief's Torment gives 15 mana per enemy hit with attacks, this immensely sustains my mana. Plus, since Cast on Shock casts the spells that are in it, Ball Lightning costs 75 mana, and in my case, Orb of Storms costs 23 mana. Together, that is 98 mana. 98 mana being cast pretty fast. I'll put a clip of that in the video. It's pretty insane. It's pretty insane how much mana gets used up because we only have 1,000, right? At least I only have 1,000. You dissipate your mana almost immediately. So with Thief's Torment, because Lightning Rod chains up to 15 times each individual arrow. So when I shoot this, I have 1, 2, 3, should have 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 lightning rods on the ground. Each of these can chain 15 times. So think about each chain equals 15 mana as long as it's hitting an enemy. And 15 chains times 15, what is that? 225, and I'm only using, 98 mana on my Cast on Shock setup, plus 143 mana from the lightning rod. So it sustains because that's just for one lightning rod. This is doing 4, so it would be 225 times 4, plenty of mana sustain. Okay, now we're going to go into the skills. So in this variant, I'm using Grim Feast. So if you don't know what Grim Feast does, Grim Feast lets you receive energy shield, or you're granted energy shield whenever you kill certain mobs. I can actually, let's go ahead and showcase that a little bit. So with Grim Feast on, do I still have my Headhunter? Yeah. So with Grim Feast on, killing these mobs, you see these little ghost looking things, or Grim Feast looking things. Whenever I pick them up, I get energy shield, and that energy shield goes more. It recovers my energy shield, and if I already have max energy shield, it goes above my maximum by up to 2 times. So yeah, 3462 is exactly double of my energy shield. And in this case, because I have a buff, I have a Headhunter buff, it increased my energy shield, and so now I have a higher maximum. So yeah, that's how Grim Feast works. As you can see, the more mobs I kill, the better it becomes. And so if an enemy comes over and hits me, let me actually let this one. Let me let one of these guys hit me. So whenever my life goes down, I can just pick up these Grim Feasts after I kill more mobs to both regenerate or regain my energy shield back and to reapply my 2x maximum. So. And like I was saying before, if you're not able to get the clear speed that you need, that I'm getting with just Herald of Thunder and Herald of Ice, you would want to slot in a cast on freeze setup. But just know that whenever you do that, you'll need to replace your Grim Feast. You won't be able to use Grim Feast at the same time unless you just get a bunch of Spirit elsewhere. And if you do that, great, awesome. I didn't want to invest that much into Spirit because it would give me less of a chance at life mods or high evasion rating and energy shield mods for my chest piece. So that's the only other place I can get energy or get Spirit. So yeah, I'm actually going to show you Cast on Shock. This isn't going to be helpful, or the mob is not going to stay alive very long. But I'm going to show it to you on this rare. Bosses actually do better, but because there's not a boss on this map, I can't really showcase that, but I will show you from here. Nothing shocked, so never mind. I'll have to show it from a previous clip. But yeah, so damage is good. Lots of explosions and shattering when you're in a breach. That's the whole essence of the build, is just to kill things very, very fast and pick up your loot and sell, rinse, repeat. Now, if this kind of gameplay loop doesn't, if you get tired of this gameplay loop, you can always do Sanctum and Ultimatum for their drops. I've heard, well, their drops are going really, really well selling on the trade site, especially the Ultimatum drops with the Soul Cores for rarity and if you got lucky and you killed the Trial Master and got the Adorn Jewel, those are worth a fortune, especially for a good roll. So that's Grim Feast. For Lightning Arrow, I'll go over Grim Feast first. So for Grim Feast, we have Cannibalism to recover our life on kill, and we have Clarity for mana regen. You don't need Clarity here. It is a 10 more Spirit requirement, but because I had the extra Spirit, I used it. You don't have to. For Lightning Arrow, I'll go over Cast on Shock and Cast on Freeze later. For Lightning Arrow, I'm using Martial Tempo for more attack speed. Primal Armament for more weapon elemental damage because we have a lot of flat damage coming into our build. Ice Bite for whenever we freeze an enemy, we get a buff of 35% of damage as cold. This is very helpful because we have a lot of flat cold damage, but we have a lot more flat lightning damage. So getting this buff means we have so much more cold damage, and so we can freeze quicker. Heft for more physical damage. And for me, in the Mobalytics guide, it discusses using Glaciation, which increases your freeze chance, which is a very good option. But in my case, because I have a level 26 Lightning Arrow, if I hover over, it's 152 mana, which I cannot sustain that for very long, right? So with Inspiration on, it reduces my skill cost by 40%, makes it 92 mana. That's a whole lot better. As you can see, it takes me a lot longer to, or not a lot longer, but it takes me longer to deplete my mana. So for lightning rod, we use scatter shot because more projectiles equals more damage. In this case, a multiplier to our damage. 2 additional means essentially triple damage minus 20%. So in this case, scatter shot reduces our damage by 20% and lessens our attack speed by 20%, which some would say, hey, that's a gimp, but the additional projectiles are super important for lightning rod. Conk effect for more area damage and less area effect. It's okay that we have less area effect because what we care about is the just damage output for these, and they're going to be in a fairly concentrated area around a boss whenever you use them. So this support is very, very good. Close combat, because more times than not, we are going to be pretty close to the boss whenever we shoot these out. And because of that, we get a 25% more damage multiplier. Conduction for more shock chance, because the more chance of shock that we have from our skills, the higher likelihood we get of actually shocking and therefore triggering our cast on shock. And primal armament for additional weapon elemental damage. Without primal armament, I think we lose like 2k DPS. So very important 6 link. Now, I didn't talk about this earlier, but if you can't afford getting the 6 link on either of these, it's okay. Just take out the last of both of these. You don't need primal armament and you don't need inspiration. Technically need inspiration for lightning arrow, but make sure to get them 6 links so you can get these supports in. They're very helpful. Wind Dancer to improve our evasion rating. Wind Dancer is very good. So in our case with the gem, we get % evasion rating per stage, and with quality, as long as we have 20% quality, we get a maximum stage. So make sure that you quality your Wind Dancer to get it to a 20% quality so you can get that extra stage. That extra stage helps us immensely. And I'll just show you how much evasion rating that gives us. So we're at 65% right now. I take off Wind Dancer, I'm at 48%. So very, very important defensive wise. And with Wind Dancer, we have Blind, Maim, and Bludgeon. Bludgeon is not required, but Blind and Maim are very nice, and I'll tell you why. Wind Dancer has a part of it called Gale Force. Gale Force knocks, or whenever you're hit, it knocks back enemies, and it actually hits them with a damage of 125% to them. That gives us the ability to have supports that can scale this. In our case, we're not really scaling it. What we're doing is we're adding a blind to that hit so that enemies have less of a chance to hit you a second time, right? Because what blind does reduces their accuracy rating and evasion rating. So in their case, they have 20% less chance to hit us. And so that's very, very nice. They've hit you once, don't let them hit you again, right? Kind of thing. And then Maim reduces their movement speed. This increases your ability to be able to run away. So if you are hit, you can dodge roll out and they'll be slower so they won't catch you as quickly. And then I added in Bludgeon because even though Wind Dancer says that it knocks enemies back on hit, I believe for some reason I was thinking that Bludgeon actually improved or increased the knockback distance, but that was totally wrong. This is not required at all. You can slot in something else, like another cannibalism if you can afford it. And then here's the meat and potatoes of the build. So we have Herald of Thunder and Herald of Ice. Herald of Thunder causes whenever you kill a shock enemy to have a attack lightning bolt hit 2 enemies that you attack later or after that, because it stores up a buff. And in our case, the buff hits the next 4 attack hits when it's this level, but the quality improves how many attacks you get. In our case, because we're Gemling and we have the node in the tree that gives us, where is it? This right here, 10% quality. Then the extra 2% right here, it gives it another bolt. And with Herald of Thunder, we have using Cold Infusion, because what we want is Herald of Thunder by itself cannot shock. So what we're telling it to do is we're telling it to freeze. And in doing so, we need to pump up its ability to do cold damage. And so our case, we're using Cold Infusion to really increase that. Without Cold Infusion, it does 1576. And with Cold Infusion, it goes up to 4600. Very nice. Glaciation for more freeze buildup. Lightning Mastery to increase the damage output that Herald of Thunder has. This is just pure damage. Long Shot, so that as the explosions chain and keep going, the further away that they are from you, the more damage that they'll do, which is pretty nice. I believe this helps me. Yeah, this is likely helping me clear 2 to 3 screens away from me. Very cool, very nice. And then for your 6th slot or your 5th support, I went for Cold Penetration. You don't have to have more than 4 supports, but in this case, if you have a 5th support, you can slot in Cold Penetration. And then, like I said earlier, with Herald of Thunder, it's trying to freeze. Herald of Ice cannot freeze, so it must shock. And in order for it to shock, we need to add in Lightning Infusion, so it has more lightning damage. This brings our damage up. So the lightning damage goes up to 7660. With Lightning Infusion, it goes up to 10,000. Which is huge, right? So more lightning damage equals more chance to shock. So in our case, we're going for that. And I didn't talk about this earlier, but Herald of Ice has its explosion is very important. It's actually the reason why things shatter and explode. If you shatter an enemy with an attack hit, in this case, the way you shatter an enemy is you kill a frozen enemy, they automatically shatter. In this case, whenever you shatter that enemy, they explode, dealing damage, attack damage around them. In our case, because Herald of Thunder is freezing enemies, and then Herald of Thunder freezes enemies, and then whenever it's frozen and they die, Herald of Ice then says, "Okay, you've been shattered. I'm going to explode you," and then the chain reaction occurs between the two. Herald of Ice explodes, the mob around, like the mob next to the one that's being shattered or being exploded, then gets shocked, which then allows another Herald of Thunder proc, which then hits them so that they can be frozen. And then once they're frozen, they get shattered because they die. And it's a whole loop. It's very, very cool. So anyway, first socket, Lightning Infusion, go for that. Next one is Conduction, because we want to have more chance to shock for our Herald of Ice. Magnified Effect, so that we can increase the area effect of that shatter. Overcharge, so we can increase the damage that those mobs take whenever they are hit with a shatter explosion. Yeah, whenever a heavy shock is inflicted on an enemy, they just take a lot more damage, and so this improves that damage, I believe, considerably. Because the mobs die so quickly, I can't test how much more damage this would be, but it's there to improve the shock magnitude. So therefore, and we don't care about shock duration, because by the time that they're shocked, they're likely going to also die. So we don't worry about that too much. And then Innervate. Innervate is just like Ice Bite, but for lightning. So in the case here, as long as we're killing a shocked enemy, we will get a damage buff. In our case, because Herald of Ice is shocking and exploding and killing enemies that are shocked, it gives us a damage boost almost immediately on killing a pack. Conductivity, this is for bossing. You don't need this for anything else. We just want to make sure that we're reducing the lightning res of our bosses down as much as we can. In this case, we are cursing them down 32%, or more than that. I think it's like 40%, because we have a heightened curse where it increases the effect of it by 25%. And I used Cursed Ground. So without Cursed Ground, just to give you an idea, we have to wait for the delay to hit. There's like a 1 second delay before it actually gets casted. With Cursed Ground, so if I cast it on the boss and they don't get hit by it and they walk away, sucks, right? But because we have Cursed Ground, what we can do is we can apply the conductivity and kite the boss into the area, and they'll be cursed, right? They'll be cursed for a good while, because I think it lasts for 6 seconds. So cast on freeze in our case, this is only for those people who, or for those of you who don't have the defensive setup with energy shield. This is going to help you clear a lot quicker in the event that your Herald of Ice and Herald of Thunder do not clear on their own. Adding cast on freeze is very good, because we are freezing with lightning arrow, so therefore our energy buildup goes up a lot. Therefore, cast on freeze procs, which then casts voltaic mark on the enemy. The enemy dies, or sorry, when that enemy dies, a nova occurs, which has a lot of damage, like a lot of damage. And then that explosion helps to proliferate the rest of the explosions and more cast on freezes because Herald of Thunder's freezing, right? And so on and so forth. The damage is pretty insane with cast on freeze. I don't need it in my setup because Herald of Thunder and Herald of Ice are doing enough damage, but if you do need it, like I said earlier, go ahead and add it on. And for this, we have next to Voltaic Mark, we have Life Tap, which is converting the cost to life. This is good in conjunction with Cannibalism. So if you're not using Grim Feast, you can move Cannibalism over to Wind Dancer so that you can get your recovered life on kill. This would mean that with Cannibalism in a slot, you are more than sustaining the life cost required for Voltaic Mark. This also makes sure that we don't just immediately kill all of our mana. Like all of our mana is just gone immediately, because without this, you just can't sustain it. Innervate is good, but normally in this case, you're using Innervate here instead of in Herald of Ice, because by this time, if you are earlier on, you're not going to have this 5th support slot. So Innervate then goes into your cast on freeze so you can get the buff. But once you get your 5th support socket or support link, you will likely not need cast on freeze anymore. But yeah, so Innervate for the damage increase for that, and magnified effects so that we have more area of effects so that whenever the Nova happens, it's a larger radius. I think by default it's 2.6 radius. Yes, 2.6 meters. With the magnified effect, I believe it is, yeah, 3.2 meters. Very, very nice. And then the creme de la creme, which is what makes this build so good with single target, is Cast on Shock. So in our Cast on Shock setup, you don't need Orb of Storms. I was actually doing some testing, and I think it's actually better with Orb of Storms. But the traditional way you do this is Cast on Shock with Ball Lightning. Keeping Ball Lightning as low as you can, keeping the levels low is helpful. Quality is good here because it increases the target range for the beams by more meters. In this case, 0.6, because we have 34% quality. And with Ball Lightning, we're going to be supporting a Cast of Shock with deceleration. This goes back to what I said before with projectile speed. This reduces the projectile speed for Ball Lightning so that it can hit more lightning rods before it fully passes over them. This is very important for just overall damage. If you didn't have this, the Ball Lightnings would go too fast because we have proj speed elsewhere. But like I said earlier, if you can reduce your projectile speed, or at least not get as much projectile speed in your tree and on your gear, this becomes even better because it's less, right? It's a less multiplier. Supported skills gain increased energy with Impetus. Very important. It's important, but it's not required. It just makes sure Cast on Shock proc that much more often. And then energy retention to essentially trigger a with a percent chance to refund half of your energy cost, which then gets it to proc even more. Like this with Impetus, this is super good. So why did I add in Orb of Storms? So what I was finding is that during bosses, I essentially had a three button setup. So I would cast my curse, I would cast lightning rods, and then once lightning rods were down and the boss, was actually there and ready, then I would cast my Orb of Storms. And there were cases where my Orb of Storms would expire and I wouldn't notice because there was just so much going on. So then I had to reapply the Orb of Storms. In this case, with adding in Orb of Storms to the Cast on Shock, I don't have to worry about reapplying Orb of Storms, and Orb of Storms is instead reapplied or put down whenever a Ball Lightning is triggered by Cast on Shock. So Ball Lightning comes out, Orb of Storms hits at the same time, and so they're both chaining the lightning rods at the same time, and that improves the damage considerably. So it appears that whenever Orb of Storms is placed, it has more chains than if it's just sitting there chaining on a regular interval. So reapplying Orb of Storms on the ground just feels cleaner. Obviously, this requires a perfect Jeweler's Orb for you to get this working. If you don't want to do that, and instead you still want to do like a 4-link or 5-link, but you still want to do Orb of Storms, you can take out energy retention. It'll just be less chance of it to proc. It doesn't mean that it's not really good. It may work. I haven't tested it because I added the extra slot in after the fact. Okay. So now that we've gone over the skills, the gems, and the gear, I want to talk about the Ascendancy. If you're going Gemling, you can do this also on Deadeye, but Gemling, that's what this build is. If you want information more on the Deadeye side of this, in the Mobalytics guide, there is a creator called Fubgun. This is where most of his build, or most of my tree and my gems are coming from his build. I just tweaked them so that they worked for Gemling because I'm on a Gemling kick. But if you need information on how to work this in Deadeye, feel free to check out his guide. His guide on Mobalytics is really good. And you can also check him out on Twitch and YouTube. But the way that you go for your Ascendancy points, you're going to go for integrated efficiency so that we can get gem studded. Getting 2 of the same support gem is huge. Then we go for crystalline potential and then implanted gems. So we get the +1 all skills and the 14% quality once we get these two nodes here. The tree here is fairly, I would say fairly standard for a Deadeye, right? This looks like a Deadeye tree. The reason why it does is because we're actually pathing through Deadeye type nodes, because a lot of the nodes that are down here, while they are really good for Gemling and crossbow type stuff, it doesn't really help us. It's not as impactful as going through the Deadeye tree. So taking all the nodes for int, just so I can path here, I can get some movement speed, some dex. Remorseless is not required in the early game. You can pick that up later. It was just something that I replaced my energy shield evasion rating node for to get a little bit more damage. Anyway, so pathed here, went for blur all the way down to more stats, went for quiver nodes to increase the bonuses from the quiver, escape velocity for more evasion rating and movement speed. I first went down here, took catalysis, elements of damage with attacks, very good. Attack damage with chance to maim, also very good. Skill speed with movement speed, very good. I went down here. I essentially beelined to lightning rod because I knew I was going to be doing lightning damage. This node is pretty broken. So if you don't know what this is, the lucky mechanic is that anything that is rolled to deal damage is now rolled twice and the better result is used. Unlucky is the opposite, which is instead of the better result being used, the worse result is used. In this case, lucky for us because most of our damage is lightning, both due to the gloves and due to the fact that we're using lightning arrow and our physical damage is being converted to lightning. Lightning rod is just really, really OP. Very, very good. But anyway, beelined over to lightning rod, going through flash storm, making sure you're getting your freeze and shock build up. This is important. And then penetrate resistances, very good. This is also freeze build up, very important for whenever you're ready to start freezing enemies and have the procs go off. I went here for feathered fletching so that whenever I get increases or reductions in projectile speed, it also applies to damage with bows. This node, I believe alone, let me actually see how much damage it gives me. So right now I'm at 56,000. Yeah, it's considerable. It's 9,000 DPS. So this is good. Like I said earlier, if you don't want to scale prot speed because you want the ball lightnings to go slower, that's okay. This may not be as important to get, but it is still a lot of damage because of certain pieces on the tree. Then from here, we're going to go up to Falcon Technique for attack speed per dex. Then we're going to go up to Unbound Forces, Storm Surge, and Storm Swell. These are very good because we're both trying to penetrate cold and lightning resistances. And this improves the chill, shock, and duration and magnitude. This is a very nice node. Plus it's a notable for Against the Darkness, but I'll talk about that in a second. Then we path up here for Kite Runner, which gives us movement speed, projectile speed, and projectile damage. So against the darkness, you want to try to go for cold damage if you can't, if you're not as reliably freezing as you should. I went for lightning damage and chaos damage. If you just need more raw damage, go for lightning damage. I checked on the trade site last night. Lightning damage and cold damage together is super expensive, but if you can afford it, great, go for that. I went for % lightning, and then a friend of mine was like, hey, why don't you also add in chaos? Because this helps get the damage through the energy shield whenever they have ES and it's high. So I'm like, okay, sure. Slotted it in. Seems to be pretty good. Just to give you an idea of how much damage this is, if I take this out, it reduces my damage by 10,000. Pretty substantial piece of damage for scaling the late game. Then I went down here, went for Coming Calamity, and I got these 2 Herald Reservation nodes because I needed them to be able to activate Cast on Shock. Right now with just Grim Feast, I don't need it, but because if I took these out, I think I'd still be okay. But the moment I move over to Cast on Shock, this 3 spirit, I believe it comes pretty... It's only able to get here by this 1 node. Without this node, I wouldn't be able to use Cast on Shock. So there's a 3rd one here. So if you end up getting to a point where you're like, hey, I still don't have enough spirit, you can get this 3rd node here. And I believe this is about 2 to 2.5 spirit per node when you have both of them enabled, or both Herald of Thunder and Herald of Ice enabled. But you can check it on your own, use whatever feels better for you, or get you to be able to get all the auras set up. For jewels, I went for mana gain on kill. This is helpful. Freeze buildup and some cold damage with a little air effect. This is actually a kind of insane jewel. Attack speed, attack damage with projectile damage is also really good. You want to just go for damage. This one's life on kill with some increased energy gain with meta skills. This helps us proc our Cast on Shock quicker. And then increased air effect is just good. Attack speed, yeah, just attack speed and Herald skill damage. Herald skill damage is the least important, but it's also helpful if you just need the extra boost. And I anointed Doomsayer for increased air of effect and increased damage of my Herald skills. Well, that's the end of the video. If you have any questions, please leave them down in the comments below, or you can join the Discord, which will also be linked down below. So this build, I've pretty much reached my end game with the build. I'm not going to upgrade it much more after this. My next build I'm thinking of doing is something with Pathfinder and Poison Concoction. I haven't quite gotten it working yet the way I want. It's actually not even leveled up yet. Once I finish leveling it up and actually seeing if it works, I will release a video about it. Until next time, have a good day, and we'll catch you in the next one. See ya.